Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Thank you all for joining in the webinar series of celebrating the month of open source. If you are following our series, we have now yet covered how to make your first contribution, how to select your first project, and in the second session, we had a deep dive into APM's ecosystem. And we uncovered about how can you get started with your open source journey with contributing to APM. And if you have missed them, you can rewatch them through our YouTube channel. In today's session on maintaining an open source project, we will learn on how successfully maintain an open source project and shed some light on critical topics like community engagement, funding, sustainability, etc. I hope you are as excited as I am for today's session. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the speaker of today's session, Lias Thomas. Lias Thomas is the founder and CEO of Hopscotch, the renowned open source API development platform. With a passion for simplifying API workflows, Lias has empowered developers worldwide by creating an user-friendly, community-driven tool that accelerates API development and testing. His expertise in open source and commitment to innovation makes him a leading figure in software development community. Hi Liz, how are you?
Hi, Sparsh. I'm doing good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank,
for having me.
thank you for joining us today. This is a wonderful topic, and very people are very much interested in learning about what goes in maintaining an open source project. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Also, before we start, I would like to congratulate you and Team Hopscotch for winning the LambdaTest Delta Awards in Best Open Source Project in Testing category. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. It came kind of like a surprise for us, even though we knew we were one among the nominees. So, thank you for organizing such a grand event and awarding the open source category to us. It means a lot for us.
Congratulations. Awesome. Let's start with the session. Over to Elias.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lias Thomas. I'm the founder and CEO at Hopscotch. And what's Hopscotch, you may ask? So Hopscotch is it's a developer tool. It's an open sourced API development platform. Consider it as an alternative to Postman or Insomnia. More about this. I will be talking more about this in a few minutes. First of all, I wanna thank Lambda Test and the community for giving me this opportunity to talk about Hopscotch and maintaining an open source project in general. Well, all right. Without further ado, I guess we can you know jump right into the core of the session, which is to learn how to maintain an open source project. Okay, so, well, before I get into the best practices or some learnings that you guys can find from the session, I want you guys to consider this particular slide as the most important one because for me, open source is essentially a philosophy that I personally embrace. All our teammates as well personally embrace throughout on everything that we do. And it actually starts with the acknowledgement that open source is for everyone. So essentially, I will be going uh, through these bullet points first, and we'll be talking more about how we can maintain an open source project and get it to a successful level of engagement for our period. So I'm going to start with the topic how open source can serve everyone. So essentially, when you talk about an open source project in general, even if you are a seasoned developer or a programmer or a tester or a CEO or a CTO, it doesn't matter the experience level that you have or the company that you're working on. And if you are dealing with a piece of software, or if you are writing some code, or if you are if your company or your employer got anything to do with softwares in general, then I'm pretty sure that under the root or under the hood, that particular piece of software is relying on a bunch of open source technologies and libraries. there are several proprietary services which are completely written on top of open source softwares, and they basically sustain their companies through different models, business models and all. But sadly, most of the open source project struggle to find the sustainability when it comes to just being an open source project. So I want to confirm the belief that open source is for everyone. And one more thing which I personally embrace is, if you want to consider your project as a full-time job, or something that you want to take it forward, or that I have seen, I have heard this many times before: build a company not just for 10 years or for 20 years, build a company that can withstand for 100 or more years. And how can we apply the same philosophy in open source? Well, for that, you have to consider every open source project as a product. So the difference between a project and a product is essentially the way we, as the maintainers of the project, perceive the company. For example, at Hopscotch, I personally started the project as a weekend kind of thingy. Like, I was at my workplace, I had a personal issue with existing tools, and I was trying to solve a personal issue that I personally faced. But at the end of the day, I was pretty lucky to find out there exists a huge community of developers and engineers who had the same issues with me. So I tried to productize the project. Hence, I was able to sustain the project as a product. So to consider your project for a longer period of vision, to have that vision, you have to consider you are building a startup or a company or a business. So this one philosophy always kept me in pace with the projects and everything that I do under the product. So that's one thing that you want to keep in mind when you approach any open source projects. Moving on, I believe open source, or anything uh, in general related to open source project, has the best ever feedback loop in the software industry. So if you are building a library or a CLI tool, or if you're writing a piece of code and you want to get instant feedbacks, then this is the best place to have. So if you have an open source project, by the end of the day, it's somewhere the source code of that particular software is hosted somewhere, so that the public can directly take a look into it and give quality feedbacks as the project requires. So the feedback loop is the most essential part of being a sustainable product. So if you want to create a sustainable open source project, be open to get feedbacks, welcome feedbacks as much as you can, and definitely ask for feedbacks without any shame. The next thing is basically some practical ways on how we can engage with the community. And uh, I'm gonna be talking about few significant practical ways how you can ensure the sustainability of a project. So having good documentation definitely helps. When I personally started Hopscotch, I mean, it's not just about Hopscotch anymore. When I contribute to any popular open source projects and all, one thing that I came to realize is that all good projects, all popular repositories maintain a good documentation. And this not just help the core maintainers to document their product, it also helps heavily for the end users to get to know about your project. So essentially, if you start writing documentation from day one onwards, that's going to ensure that your product has a practice of keeping everything documented. And I personally use GitHub wikis as a documentation page for our open source project, but at the same time we do keep a separate documentation site which is, which can be essentially written in markdown for the easiness of use. And we obviously open source the same under our organization to attract users and to give feedbacks on our documentation. So writing good documentation is definitely the first important and relevant ways on how you can maintain an open source project. And the next thing would be automating repeated tasks. So in terms of an open source project, it obviously has a public facing source code and a deployment, or a software base where users can take a look into it. So most of the time users would find certain bugs or issues, or maybe it could be a feature request or something. And the go-to way to share those feedbacks is through code hosting websites like GitHub or GitLab. And for us personally, we rely completely on GitHub, which is the reason why we get lots of issue tickets on a monthly basis, like more than around 100 of feature requests and bug reports on a monthly basis. So there are some governance that we have in place which allows us to automate some repeated tasks. So if a duplicate issue comes in, we have certain actions in place which will close the issue as a duplicate of an existing one. So this not just help the end user to get to that solution, the answer, sooner, rather than waiting for someone from the core team to comment or give a solution to the issue. And they can easily find that same solution from another ticket. It's matter of having the discoverability in place. So try to automate repeated tasks as many as possible. Come with batch scripts, or any webhooks or cone chops, or anything that works for you will be sufficient. And it's essentially one ways to keep I mean, one way to maintain less interaction, manual interaction from the core team in the maintaining aspect of the project. And one another thing is always address issues. So in terms of a product, uh, if you are writing a software, then it's obvious that it's not the best software in the world, and essentially there will be bugs, or it's just matter of time until we figure them out. So when a community member, or someone who has been a user of a product opens up an issue or a feature request, always welcome them, give constructive feedbacks, and address the issue. If it's a non-issue, just upfront tell that this is a non-issue, we are working on it. Or if it's something that is not in your roadmap or in your current plan, then again mention the same on the issue ticket itself. Because if you do not address that issue, by the end of the day users will think that the core team is not giving importance to what our community requirements are. And most of the time there will be like lots of versatile, diverse types of community requirement, community requests and all. But addressing the issue doesn't necessarily mean to implement them right away, but rather making sure the voice from the community is heard. So definitely keep in mind to address all issues as soon as possible. One thing that I can personally remember in this particular aspect of Hopscotch is that when me and our co-founder Andrew Bastin started working on Hopscotch back in 2019. He used to live in Canada and I used to live in India, and we both had complete opposite time zones. So we had a personal rule in place. So whenever we see an issue ticket, or we had a action in Slack which would DM us whenever some issue ticket or pull request is open in our GitHub channel. So whenever this happen, either one of us should address that particular issue and give proper feedbacks to that issue ticket. So having someone in the opposite time zone used to be a really bad headache for us, but in this particular aspect, it really helped us to address an issue as soon as possible. Like if I am awake, I would just jump in and personally address the issue with the proper feedback. Or if I am asleep and my partner who's from another continent is awake, he would be the guy who's to address that issue. So having someone to assigning someone to address the issue is definitely a good take to maintain the open source project. The next would be spread the word about your product. So essentially there is a term that if you build the product, users will come. And most of the time it's not the case. You have to keep on grinding. You have to do some sort of marketing. It can be as simple as writing a blog post or an article, or sharing your learnings throughout your personal blog. I mean, this is something that I personally did when I started out working on Hopscotch. There were a lot of learnings that I personally had, and essentially I kept a journal as in form of a blog post. So I used to write regular articles uh, of the learnings that I had from building Hopscotch, and I kept on doing that for over a while. And when I look back, I could find that there were more than 20 25 plus articles, which is literally on how you can simplify the API development process with Hopscotch. Even though it happened without any intention, they became a marketing strategy, and even a place where developers or the end users could learn more about Hopscotch. So spread the word about your product through any medium should work. It's better if it's documented as articles or blog posts in your personal or your organization. I did with my personal as well as the organization account. So this is something that you can definitely try it out to maintain the product and essentially to attract many new users as well. And in terms of attracting helpful contributors, well, definitely, yeah. So in terms of contributions, we had just little over 200 plus all-time contributors to the Hopscotch open source repository. And I believe we always encouraged uh, any sort of contribution from the community end. It may be a bit of like maybe a change of one line, maybe a fix in typography, or it may be a contribution on the languages that we support. But even though how small the contribution may be, we welcomed every external contribution apart from our code team. And we incentive the contribution from the community. Like we would uh, recognize them throughout the month. We would send out swags for highest number of contributors we had, when you consider a month and all. I mean, there should be a mindset for the core members to recognize the contributors, and as well as having a positive mentality to uh, attract contributors as many as you can, because in turn they would speak about your product in their circle, and hence giving you guys a compound effect in terms of marketing as well as recognition through the entire open source bubble. One another thing, being a dev rel or even a developer tool, I can personally relate is that providing technical support for your open source project. So at Hopscotch, most of the requests or bug fix or anything related to the company or the product are essentially technical. And being an engineer myself, I would always find time to provide technical support, both in terms of writing code to fix an issue, or even getting on a call with our potential users to figure out what actually went wrong, where we can improve the product and all. And offering, always offering to help with anything related to the tech. So providing technical support definitely helps to scale your product and figure out bugs and errors as soon as possible. So this one thing definitely helped us personally to improve a lot. Do keep in mind that providing technical support will definitely help. All right, so the next one would be considering partnerships. Well, at first, in our early days, we had prominent personalities from the open source repositories, like CEO of GitHub and CEO of Ionic frameworks, and many such legendary open source personalities sponsoring us to work on Hopscotch full time. And when I personally started the project, it used to be a kind of like a side project or even a weekend kind of thing for me. So I would ask our potential sponsors, can we get on a partnership so that you can talk about Hopscotch in any medium, any ways possible, and write us a use case or a case study on how Hopscotch help you to resolve a particular issue that you had with any existing tools. And they would take the effort and help me to come up with a partnership which would help us to create content on the same product. And if you do this for over a certain time of period, you would be, at the end of the day, you would get a lot of content in place, which would act as a top of the funnel for everyone interested in the segment of tools that you are hoping to deploy. So consider partnering up with similar minded people or industry leaders or companies in the same segment of softwares, and that's gonna become a mutual benefit for all the parties. So definitely consider partnerships. One thing which I personally find out about building open source projects in general is that it's a time consuming project. So this would be the next best take. Every project essentially requires some sort of time period to get into a matured state. And when I say this, believe me, it's true, because before start working on Hopscotch, I actually had 10 or even a dozen plus other open source repositories in my profile, but none of them essentially got even a single user. And guess what, I still kept on building stuff over and over again until I had the fortune to build Hopscotch in the first place. So give it time. Don't necessarily quit when any projects didn't go as planned. But again, keep on working. The consistency is being the key. You have to wait for a adequate amount of time for any project to get into that matured state where users can rely on your product for their daily driver or a use case that they're already having with an alternative. So definitely give it a thought before quitting on any projects that you have at this point. One another thing would be ask for pull request at every opportunity. So essentially, when someone asks for a bug fix or a feature request, I would address that issue with a suggestion that can they make a contribution to the source code, so that that particular issue, which could be a personal thing only for that particular user. So I would ask them, can they make a contribution to the product, so that the request will be fulfilled as soon as possible. And being a member of core team itself, I would personally help them to either locally host hopes code so that they can get into contributing as soon as possible, or I would personally help them to implement the logic the core logic, and ask them to open the PR, so that it will be much easier for me to review. So ask for code contribution as well as pull requests that can fix a bug or a feature request at every opportunities. That's gonna help to get and build a healthy community around your open source project. Another one would be asking for help. So when I started building Hopscotch, one fun fact is that Hopscotch was literally my first ever project that I personally built in Vue.js framework. So before that, I never knew about a framework called Vue.js. I knew it's an upcoming framework. I knew it's a modern one and all, but I never had any experience in building projects in Vue.js. So I would ask for a lot of help from the community's end to essentially help me with build the project. Like, I don't know the basics back then. I came to learn more. I came to learn more about the project after a while when I started the project in the first place. So never be ashamed for asking help. Always ask for help if you want to learn more. And essentially, if it's an open source project, there will be a lot of people who are willing to offer help just because it's actually by the end of the day doing a favor to them. So feel free to ask for help, and I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of people who are willing to offer help for your open source project as well. And that's one way to maintain your open source project for a long. One last thing, when I started working on open source projects in general, is that I would always encourage people to contribute to the project, and I would keep a list of contributors who has previously contributed to the entire ecosystem. So keeping those lists will definitely give them an incentive. Like, the change they introduce is essentially affecting millions of users, and thereby making sure that their contribution is in a software piece that's pretty relevant in the industry. So maintaining a list of contributions definitely helps. And one personal uh, thing that I found out is that most of our employees, like everyone I personally hired over the last 3 years, actually happen to be either one of our early time contributors, or who were really interested in contributing to the project. So maintaining the list definitely helped me to backtrack and find really good hires to the company. So this is one another way I would suggest everyone to look into, if you are if you want to backtrack and hire full-time employees for the company. So yeah, that's basically it. So these are some of the best practices which we personally took to make sure that Hopscotch as a product, as a open source company or a startup, and some intentional steps we take forward to make sure the company will be sustaining, the product will be sustaining, and by the end of the day it will be delivering high impactful value to the users. I would love to hear from everyone listening to the session. I believe if you are on LinkedIn or on YouTube, feel free to comment any questions that you have. I will be taking the next 10 to 15 minutes to answer any specific questions that you guys have. Thank you for
Thank you.
listening. Yeah.
Thank you, Elias, for a wonderful session. As a contributor, that made a lot of sense. So, by starting making my first commit to open source organization, and how maintainers were very welcoming, and how they helped with the first PR and the second PR, and how they engaged me and others to the project. That was very wonderful. And coming to learn from a maintaining point of view, that made a lot of sense. Thank you. We have a couple of questions. I will just add. One was from Ritu. How are there any specific tools or platform that you recommend for monitoring your project metrics?
So internally, we use OpenTelemetry to monitor any architectural works and all. But I can prefer maybe a platform called Aviel, which is an open source community management platform, which allows you to get insights on how the community is working. So I mean that's one way to do it, and another way to keep track of the insight is basically rely completely on GitHub. I mean, if you have your, I mean, consider if you have a npm package, and if you have them deployed as packages in npm registry and all. One good way to look at the traction is to look at the number of downloads, monthly, weekly downloads. So, if possible, uh, use the available tools, non-tools. I would not recommend to jump to any new tool so that it will be much easier. So, the best tool that's gonna work for you is the existing non-tools. So, yeah.
Definitely, definitely. One of the question is how do you handle conflicts and disagreements within the project's contributor community?
Well, we get this all the time. Like, there was a time when contributors or, guys from community would shout at us because we were not agreeing with the community in general. But I believe you should have a governance place. Like, whenever a conflict with the community or the core member comes on, there should be documented steps on how you can take an action on it. For example, if you get a core contribution or a feature request, and if it's not something that you have in your roadmap, just make it upfront that we have a packed roadmap for the next few quarters, and including this particular feature request or bug fix gonna relatively deprioritize our existing roadmap. So don't do that. So essentially, make sure you put it upfront that we have a governance in place. It's documented. I mean, you can document it in your code of conduct if you have that file, and essentially follow the documented steps. That will be always work. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Liz. Just last two questions. One is on the similar lines. What metrics do you track to assess the health and the growth of your project?
So Hopscotch essentially are three different projects. So one is our cloud offering, something that you could find from 𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐻.io. And for that particular product, we actually track monthly active users. This might be the similar case for any hosted websites or web apps, or any platform, like any SaaS kind of platform. Monthly active users are one really good way to assess the growth. I personally had one story where when I had the first commit, within the first 2 weeks, we had more than 10,000 plus active users, within the first 2 weeks of having Hopscotch in the first place. And as of now, it's somewhere around 100,000 monthly active users as well. So that's essentially one product, and we have community edition, which is free for everyone. Host it on your premise kind of thingy. So for those instance, well, Hopscotch doesn't necessarily require internet connection. So we get little to very minimum telemetry data from those who are self-hosting the project. So essentially, if it's a hosted one, you would get all the data, but if it's a self-hosted instance, you would get low to no data at all. So for those kind of installations and all, we either track a telemetry module. We actually have a telemetry module which is completely optional. Users can just turn it off, and we would get no data at all. We would never know number of installs and all. And so that's one way. Have a telemetry module completely optional, and let the user decide whether they want to share the data at all. So yeah.
Thank you, Liz. Sorry, sorry. You're saying something?
No, no, I'm good.
Okay. Just one last question. Uh, can you share the strategies for managing technical debt and backward compatibility as the project evolves?
All right. So Hopscotch is essentially a complex project with a lot of moving parts. For example, we have more than, I believe, 200 plus front end components like buttons, checkboxes, labels, those kind of things. So, one thing I personally found out while building Hopscotch is that there could be a lot of technical debt if we do not, keep in mind that we can't ship undocumented or code which are not scrutinized. So one thing I personally make sure is that before writing a single line of code or before merging a pull request to the production deployment, I would personally review it and make sure that it has lowest to I mean, it has the minimum technical debt as possible, because rewriting or revamping some code block which I wrote in 2019 on 2023 doesn't make any sense. That's gonna put us in a place where we will be uncertain on how the effects of this particular code change might affect on the entire product as a whole. So to minimize the technical debt, have systems in place, have peer-to-peer pull request reviews in place, scrutinize the code that you write that goes into the main production, and by the end of the day make sure if you have tests in place, all tests are passing when you write. And one more thing to add is how we maintain the backward compatibility. Well, we do provide almost 100 percentage backward compatibility to all the systems except few things which are versioned. So versioning definitely helps. You can bump from a minor to a major version with deprecation notice and all. So that's definitely helps to notify the user whether this particular change or this particular version involve any kind of breaking changes at all. And one another way is proper migration tool. So when you have a breaking change, or when you launch something which basically has a different foundation from what you had previously, have proper migration tools in place which would help users to migrate from an existing state to the newest one with again minimum uh, backward compatible issues. This is something that we personally encourage at Hopscotch, and most of our systems do have 100% backward compatibility as well. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lias, for answering all the questions. Yes, one thing that is that you have to plan a lot of things ahead before time and work on it. So that saves the time forward. Yeah. Thank you all for joining. Thank you all for following the month of open source series. We will be coming up with the next episode next week. So stay tuned. And thank you, Liz. So if you have any other further questions about maintaining the open source, you can reach out to Liz on LinkedIn or Scotch, and he will surely help you out. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. It's wonderful having you.
Thank you, first. Thank you, Lambda community, for having me.